If you're in college or the parents of a college student, or maybe one day you're going to have a child in college, listen up. Financial experts say it's important to be thinking about your financial setup while you're in school. I'm joined virtually tonight by Chris Nemes, a partner with Nemes Rush Family Wealth Management. Chris, thanks so much for joining us tonight to talk about this topic. Let's start off with the basics. Why is it so important to be thinking about your financial picture, even when you're in those early college years?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And the answer to your question is that college is a natural transition time between high school and getting a job and being completely on your own. So it's the perfect time for students across the country, specifically in Michigan, to be looking at their budgeting, to be looking at their finances and getting prepared for what's to come in 1 to 4 years, depending on what grade they're in school.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's already so much going on in college that you're thinking about, classes and social life and being on your own. So it can be kind of a daunting topic to think, okay, let's also be looking at our financial picture. What are some suggestions from your standpoint for people, in their late teens, early 20s, things to be thinking about to be setting up that healthy financial look?
First and foremost, it starts with a budget. So understanding, even as it relates to tuition, whether you have scholarships or whether your parents are helping you with tuition or paying it yourself, what is the total cost on an annual basis of the education? What's the cost of the room and board? How much income is coming in, whether it's from someone working a job or, again, a parent is helping pay? Getting that experience is one of the most useful things you can have going on later into your career, because budgeting is the number one key to having financial success. So that's number one. Number two, I would say start building your credit. If you're planning to buy a home once you're in your late 20s, mid 20s, you're going to need to have credit established. So it's very important that you stay within your budget while spending on that card. And it's important that you make the payments on time and just make sure that you're setting yourself up for success once you're out of college.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something really key there, because it can be a little confusing when you're starting out that, yeah, you want to be building that credit for down the line when you need it. But at the same time, you don't want to be abusing the credit card system where you get yourself into a bunch of debt. It's kind of a tricky balance of managing all of that. Would you agree?
I would agree. And I think it's a combination of debt that a lot of these students are coming out with as well. So even if you are very good with your credit card and you're making your payments and you're staying within your budget, you may be accruing student loan interest. And each year when you have a new semester, you could be taking out an additional loan at 6% or 6.5%. So learning to manage that debt when it's manageable at the credit card level will help you as you get into your 20s and you're potentially paying off student loans, car loans, or other types of debt. And it's very important that you stay on top of it, because the interest is very significant on those sorts of loans, and it will come back to bite you if you don't manage it the right way.
Yeah, I think just a basic understanding of how all of these topics work is also so key. If you didn't grow up with someone kind of educating you on that, learning how interest works, learning, how to build credit in a healthy way, as you were mentioning. Let's talk about debt on depreciating assets. That was another topic to bring up, just when you're thinking about, again, having this stable financial picture.
Yeah, so a depreciating asset would be, in the best example, a car, right? So you buy a car, and maybe it's a $50,000 car, but in the first 3 to 4 years, it's only going to be worth, 25,000 by the time you get to the end of that term. It generally depreciates about 50% in the first 3 to 4 years. So if you took out a loan for $40,000 or $35,000 for that $50,000 car that you bought, you may be underwater on that car by the time you get to 3, 4 years in. So it's very important that people are saving the right amount. They're not over leveraging themselves. In other words, they're not taking out too much debt, because the worst thing that you could do is you go and sell that car and you owe 5,000 to the bank or 4,000 to the bank. You're almost stuck with it in some ways. So getting an understanding of, what are the payments going to be? What is it going to look like for me on a monthly basis? I mean, the example I use all the time is that student loan interest is generally between 6 and 7% on the unsubsidized loans. So if you have a 25-year repayment term, which is the general repayment term for loans that are above $100,000, you're going to pay just as much in interest as you are going to pay in principal. So if you took out $100,000 in loans and it takes you 25 years to pay it off, you're also going to pay $100,000 in interest.
Yeah, that is something to be considering and thinking about for sure. Okay, and if parents are hearing this or students are hearing this and they're thinking, oh my goodness, like how am I gonna, handle tackling all of these things? What's your advice to them on, just taking it slow so that in a couple of years after college, you're in that better place than if you kind of forgot about all of this right now?
Yeah, I think it's being very mindful of when you're in school. You have to look at your income when you graduate as your biggest wealth building tool. So if you are taking on loans and you are going to have these financial responsibilities, you have to make sure that what you're studying is going to be able to fund the interest and the payments on all these sorts of debt, right? So understanding what's the income that I can expect when I come out of my field of study. What is that going to look like as far as my after-tax income? Because the government's going to take their piece of it, and creating almost a future budget. So in accounting, they would call it a pro forma. So looking at, if I'm making this amount, I'm paying this amount in taxes, can I fund the payment on all these different sorts of loans? And you can really be proactive and get ahead and take some valuable minors in school, whether it's accounting or finance or whatever the minor may be, but something that's going to put you in a position to be able to earn enough income to fund these payments. Because again, income is the biggest wealth building tool that the majority of these students are going to have once they do graduate.
Absolutely. Chris Nemes, thank you so much for walking us through this. Some really great things for families and students to be thinking about to set up for that future success. We really appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks for having me.